Have you ever wondered what happens when you dive deep into the twisted, chaotic universe of Family Guy, while your brain is winding down for sleep? Tonight, we're going on a journey through the most bizarre, darkest, and surprisingly complex lore hidden beneath the surface of Seth MacFarlane's animated masterpiece. From alternate realities to character deaths that actually matter, from time travel paradoxes to the secret history of Quahog itself, this is going to be the most comprehensive exploration of Family Guy's hidden depths you've ever experienced. But before we begin our descent into this animated rabbit hole, let me warn you. What you're about to discover might change how you see those seemingly random cutaway gags forever. Because underneath all that crude humor and pop culture references lies a narrative so intricate and dark that it makes other animated series look like children's picture books. So get comfortable, dim those lights, and prepare to have your mind blown as we uncover the secret lore of Family Guy that most viewers never notice. Our story begins not with the Griffins we know today, but with a question that haunts every longtime viewer. How many times has this family actually died? The answer is more disturbing than you might think. Throughout the series, we've witnessed multiple universe resets, character resurrections, and timeline manipulations that suggest something far more sinister is happening in Quahog than meets the eye. Let's start with Brian Griffin, whose death in Season 12 wasn't just a ratings stunt. It revealed something crucial about the Family Guy universe. When Brian was killed by a car, the emotional weight of his death felt different from the usual cartoon violence we're accustomed to. But here's where it gets interesting. His replacement, Vinny, wasn't just a random character. He represented a glimpse into what the show could become without its moral compass, its voice of reason in a house full of chaos. The fact that Stewie was able to travel back in time to save Brian tells us something profound about the nature of time itself in this universe. Time travel isn't just a plot device in Family Guy. It's a fundamental force that shapes reality. Stewie's time machine isn't just some random invention. It's connected to a larger cosmic framework that governs how this universe operates. Consider this. Every time we see Stewie travel through time, reality doesn't just change, it fractures. We're shown multiple timelines existing simultaneously, each one revealing different aspects of the Griffin family's true nature. In some timelines, Peter never met Lois. In others, Meg is the favorite child. These aren't just alternate realities for comedy, they're glimpses into the infinite possibilities that exist when time itself becomes malleable. But time travel is just the beginning of Family Guy's cosmic horror. Let's talk about the multiverse theory that runs through the entire series. The show has explicitly confirmed that multiple universes exist, each with their own version of the Griffin family. We've seen evil versions, dog versions, even versions where the family members have completely different personalities and life paths. This multiverse concept becomes even more disturbing when you realize that some episodes might not be taking place in the same universe we started with. That feeling you get when character personalities seem inconsistent or when major events are forgotten. It might not be lazy writing. It might be because we're actually watching a different universe entirely. The chicken fights between Peter and Ernie represent something deeper than just extended fight sequences. They're battles between order and chaos, between different philosophical approaches to existence. Ernie represents structure, routine, and the mundane aspects of daily life. Peter represents pure unrestrained desire, and the rejection of social norms. Their fights aren't just physical confrontations, they're metaphysical battles for the soul of their shared reality. Each chicken fight escalates in scope and destruction, suggesting that these conflicts are affecting the fundamental fabric of their universe. The level of destruction they cause should realistically end civilization as we know it, yet everything returns to normal afterwards. This isn't cartoon logic. This is evidence of reality itself being reset after each confrontation, maintaining the status quo through cosmic intervention. Now let's examine the true nature of Stewie Griffin, perhaps the most complex character in the entire Family Guy universe. On the surface, he's a baby with advanced intelligence and homicidal tendencies. But dig deeper, and you'll find layers of psychological complexity that rival the greatest literary characters. Stewie's relationship with his sexuality isn't just character development. It represents the internal struggle between his intellectual advancement and his emotional immaturity. His confusion about his own identity reflects the broader theme of identity crisis that runs through the entire series. Every Griffin family member struggles with who they really are versus who they think they should be. His scientific inventions aren't just plot devices. They represent humanity's desire to control and manipulate reality itself. Stewie's time machine, his weather control device, his mind control technology, they're all attempts to impose order on a chaotic universe. But every time he uses these inventions, reality becomes more unstable, not less. The most disturbing aspect of Stewie's character is his relationship with Brian. Their friendship represents the only genuine emotional connection in the Griffin household, but it's also the most psychologically complex relationship in the series. Brian serves as both father figure and intellectual equal to Stewie, creating a dynamic that's simultaneously heartwarming and deeply troubling. Let's shift our focus to Meg Griffin, the most tragic character in the Family Guy universe. Her treatment by her family isn't just running gag. It's a systematic psychological experiment in how prolonged emotional abuse shapes personality development. Meg represents the scapegoat, the family member who absorbs all the dysfunction and toxicity so that the others can maintain their illusion of normalcy. But here's what most viewers miss. Meg isn't actually the weakest member of the Griffin family. She's the strongest. She endures constant psychological torture and emerges with her sanity relatively intact. In episodes where she finally snaps and fights back, we see glimpses of her true potential. She's not the victim. She's the survivor. The episodes where Meg temporarily gains popularity or success reveal something crucial about the Griffin family dynamic. They literally cannot function without having someone to blame and abuse. When Meg rises above her assigned role, the entire family structure begins to collapse. This suggests that their dysfunction isn't accidental. It's carefully maintained through deliberate psychological manipulation. Chris Griffin represents wasted potential and the tragedy of inherited dysfunction. His artistic abilities and occasional flashes of intelligence show us what he could become in a healthier environment. But he's trapped in a cycle of learned helplessness, modeled after his father's behavior patterns. Chris is what happens when natural talent is systematically crushed by family dysfunction. His relationship with his imaginary friend and his artistic pursuits aren't just character quirks. They're survival mechanisms, ways of maintaining some connection to his authentic self while navigating a family that demands conformity to their twisted value system. Peter Griffin himself is perhaps the most disturbing character when you really analyze his behavior patterns. He isn't just immature or irresponsible. He displays clear signs of multiple personality disorders, sociopathic tendencies, and complete lack of empathy for others. His actions regularly destroy lives, yet he never faces meaningful consequences. This isn't cartoon logic. This is evidence that Peter exists outside normal social and legal frameworks. He's protected by something larger than himself, some cosmic force that ensures his continued existence regardless of the chaos he creates. Peter Griffin isn't just a bad father and husband. He's an agent of chaos, a force of nature that exists to disrupt order and stability. His job history reveals something interesting about the economic reality of the Family Guy universe. He's worked for toy companies, television networks, and various other industries, often rising to positions of significant power despite his obvious incompetence. This suggests that the economic system itself is fundamentally broken, rewarding chaos and incompetence over skill and dedication. Lois Griffin's psychology is perhaps the most complex of all: the family members. She comes from wealth and privilege but chose to marry into dysfunction. This wasn't an accident or a mistake. It was a deliberate choice that reveals something dark about her character. Lois is addicted to drama and chaos. She could leave Peter at any time, but she stays because the dysfunction feeds something deep within her psyche. Her moments of extreme violence and rage aren't just comedy beats. They're glimpses into her true nature, carefully hidden beneath a facade of suburban respectability. Lois Pewterschmidt-Griffin is potentially the most dangerous member of the family because she understands manipulation and control in ways the others don't. Her relationship with her wealthy family reveals the broader class dynamics at play in the Family Guy universe. The Pewterschmidts represent old money, established power structures, and systematic oppression disguised as respectability. Lois chose to reject that world, but she brought its values and methods into her marriage, creating a toxic hybrid of working-class dysfunction and upper-class manipulation. The town of Quahog itself is a character in this story, and its history reveals disturbing truths about American society. Founded on violence and maintained through systematic corruption, Quahog represents every small American town that's slowly dying while pretending everything is fine. The local government is openly corrupt, the police force is incompetent, and the social structures are designed to maintain inequality and dysfunction. Mayor West's obvious mental illness and continued political power isn't just absurd humor. It's commentary on how democratic systems can be manipulated by charismatic figures who appeal to voters' worst impulses. His policies are destructive and nonsensical, yet he remains popular because he validates the community's desire to avoid responsibility for their own problems. The recurring characters in Quahog each represent different aspects of American social dysfunction. Cleveland represents the loyal friend who enables destructive behavior rather than confronting it. Joe represents the warrior mentality that struggles to adapt to civilian life. Quagmire represents unchecked masculinity and sexual predation disguised as humor. But it's the relationship between these characters that reveals the true horror of the Family Guy universe. They're all trapped in cycles of mutual enablement, each one preventing the others from growing or changing. Their friendships aren't based on genuine affection or shared values. They're based on mutual need for validation of their worst impulses. The show's treatment of religion reveals another layer of its complex worldview. Religion in Family Guy isn't just mocked or dismissed. It's shown to be another system of control and manipulation, used by both believers and non-believers to justify their behavior and avoid taking responsibility for their actions. The various religious figures who appear throughout the series are almost universally corrupt, hypocritical, or mentally unstable. This isn't anti-religious sentiment. It's commentary on how spiritual concepts can be twisted to serve earthly power structures. The show suggests that genuine spirituality might exist, but it's constantly corrupted by human weakness and desire for control over others. Death himself appears as a recurring character, and his portrayal reveals something profound about the show's philosophy regarding mortality and meaning. Death isn't portrayed as evil or frightening. He's shown as tired, overworked, and occasionally compassionate. This suggests that mortality isn't the enemy in the Family Guy universe. Meaninglessness is the real enemy. The various celebrity encounters throughout the series serve a specific narrative function beyond simple humor. They represent the collision between fantasy and reality, between the Griffin family's delusional self-image and the actual impact they have on the world. Most celebrities in Family Guy are either destroyed by their encounter with the Griffins or reveal themselves to be just as dysfunctional and hollow. This pattern suggests that fame and success in their universe don't actually solve fundamental human problems. The celebrities are just as trapped in cycles of self-destruction and meaninglessness as the regular characters. Success becomes another form of prison, another way to avoid confronting deeper truths about existence and purpose. The show's handling of social and political issues reveals a deeply cynical worldview disguised as mindless entertainment. Every political position is shown to be equally corrupt and self-serving. Every social movement is revealed to have ulterior motives. Every attempt at progress is ultimately futile because human nature itself is fundamentally flawed. But here's where it gets interesting. This cynicism isn't presented as the final word. It's presented as the starting point for authentic human connection. Only after accepting the futility of external solutions do the characters occasionally find moments of genuine love, friendship, and meaning. These moments are rare and usually brief, but they represent the show's true message about what makes life worth living. The darker episodes of Family Guy, the ones that deal with serious topics like domestic violence, addiction, and mental illness, aren't just tonal experiments. They're glimpses into the reality that exists beneath the cartoon violence and crude humor. These episodes suggest that everything we've been laughing at is actually a coping mechanism, a way of dealing with trauma and pain that's too intense to face directly. Stewie and Brian's road trip episodes reveal this most clearly. When these two characters are alone together, away from the family dysfunction, their conversations become deeper and more meaningful. They discuss philosophy, mortality, and the nature of existence itself. These aren't just character development moments. They're the show's way of exploring serious themes without the distraction of constant humor. The time travel episodes create a complex mythology around cause and effect, free will, and determinism. When Stewie changes the past, the consequences ripple through reality in ways that suggest everything is connected to everything else. Small changes create massive alterations in the timeline, implying that individual choices have far more impact than we typically realize. But here's the disturbing part. Despite all the timeline changes and alternate realities, certain core patterns remain constant. The Griffin family dysfunction persists across multiple universes and timelines. This suggests that some aspects of human nature are so fundamental that they transcend individual choice and circumstance. The episodes that focus on Brian's writing career reveal the show's commentary on creative expression and artistic integrity. Brian's struggle to balance commercial success with authentic expression mirrors the show's own position in the entertainment landscape. Family Guy itself exists in the tension between meaningful content and commercial viability, between artistic expression and market demands. His relationship with other writers and artists in the series shows how creative communities can become toxic environments where competition and ego destroy the collaborative spirit that should drive artistic endeavors. The literary world in Family Guy is portrayed as pretentious, shallow, and ultimately meaningless. Yet Brian continues to pursue it because the alternative is accepting that his life has no greater purpose. The show's portrayal of education and intellectual development is particularly dark. Smart characters like Brian and Stewie are often shown to be more miserable than their less intelligent family members. Knowledge and awareness don't lead to happiness or fulfillment. They lead to greater understanding of how meaningless and chaotic existence really is. This anti-intellectual streak isn't promoting ignorance as bliss. It's questioning whether intelligence and education, as they currently exist in our society, actually serve human flourishing or just create new forms of suffering and alienation. The show suggests that wisdom might be different from intelligence, and that genuine understanding might require accepting mystery and uncertainty rather than seeking complete knowledge and control. The musical episodes and cutaway gags serve a specific psychological function beyond simple entertainment. They provide brief escapes from the relentless dysfunction of the main narrative. These moments of pure creativity and joy remind us what human beings are capable of when they're not trapped in cycles of self-destruction and mutual harm. But even these moments are tinged with sadness because they highlight how rare genuine happiness and creativity are in the Griffin family's daily life. The contrast makes their normal dysfunction seem even more tragic and unnecessary. As we reach the end of our deep dive into Family Guy's hidden lore, what emerges is a picture of a universe that's simultaneously hopeless and hopeful, meaningless and profound. The show presents human nature as fundamentally flawed and destructive, yet it also shows us moments of genuine love, creativity, and connection that make existence worthwhile despite its inherent tragedy. The Griffin family represents all of us at our worst and occasionally at our best. Their dysfunction is our dysfunction, magnified and exaggerated for comedic effect, but rooted in recognizable human weaknesses and fears. Their rare moments of genuine connection remind us that love and meaning are possible, even in the midst of chaos and pain. The true lore of Family Guy isn't hidden in elaborate conspiracy theories or complex mythologies. It's hidden in plain sight, in the psychological patterns and relationship dynamics that drive every episode. It's a show about damaged people trying to connect with each other and failing most of the time, but occasionally succeeding in ways that make all the failure worthwhile. And maybe that's the most profound truth of all. That meaning doesn't come from avoiding dysfunction and chaos, but from finding ways to love and connect, despite the inevitable presence of dysfunction and chaos in all human relationships. The Griffins aren't aspirational characters. They're cautionary tales and sources of recognition, mirrors that reflect our own struggles with identity, purpose, and connection. So the next time you watch Family Guy, remember that you're not just watching crude humor and pop culture references. You're watching one of the most complex examinations of human nature ever created, disguised as mindless entertainment, but actually offering profound insights into what it means to be human in a universe that often seems indifferent to our suffering and our joy. Sweet dreams, and may your own family dysfunction be slightly less chaotic than the Griffins, but no less full of unexpected moments of love and meaning that make it all worthwhile. The lore of Family Guy is ultimately the lore of being human, and that's a story that never really ends. It just keeps evolving with each new episode of our own lives. Have you ever wondered if Stewie Griffin is actually a psychopath or just a misunderstood genius? What if I told you that the creators of Family Guy have hidden some of the most disturbing and fascinating secrets about this baby that would completely change how you see the show forever? Welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the darkest corners of animated television. Today, we're uncovering the shocking lore behind one of animation's most controversial characters. From hidden meanings in his accent to disturbing implications about his sexuality and time travel adventures, we're about to explore Family Guy's secrets that even die-hard fans have missed. But before we start, make sure to hit that subscribe button because this rabbit hole goes deeper than you think, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Let's start with something that will blow your mind right away. Stewie's British accent isn't just a random character quirk. According to the show's creator, Seth MacFarlane, there's a deeply psychological reason behind it. The accent represents Stewie's desperate attempt to distance himself from his family and create a superior identity. It's actually a defense mechanism rooted in childhood trauma and feelings of abandonment. Think about it. Stewie is surrounded by what he perceives as intellectual inferiors. His father Peter is portrayed as bumbling and crude. His mother Lois often dismisses him, and his siblings fail to engage with his advanced intellect. The British accent becomes his way of elevating himself above what he sees as American mediocrity. It's not just pretentious, it's protective. But here's where it gets really interesting. Voice actor Seth MacFarlane has revealed in interviews that the accent was originally inspired by Rex Harrison's performance in My Fair Lady, specifically the character of Henry Higgins. Harrison's character was known for being intellectually arrogant and emotionally distant from others. Sound familiar? This connection runs deeper than you might think. Henry Higgins was a character who viewed himself as superior to everyone around him, particularly women, and had difficulty forming genuine emotional connections. These are exact parallels to Stewie's character development throughout the series. The accent isn't just mimicry, it's psychological modeling. Moving into even more disturbing territory, let's talk about Stewie's relationship with violence and murder. In early seasons, Stewie's homicidal tendencies weren't played entirely for laughs. The writers included subtle hints that his violent thoughts stem from genuine psychological disturbance rather than typical childhood acting out. Consider his detailed knowledge of weapons, torture techniques, and murder methods. This isn't information a normal one-year-old would possess, even in an animated universe. The show's writers have suggested that Stewie's intelligence comes with a dark side, an inability to process normal, emotional responses to conflict. There's a particularly chilling episode where Stewie creates a simulation of killing Lois, and his satisfaction with the violence goes beyond typical cartoon comedy. The writers included psychological details that suggest Stewie experiences genuine pleasure from imagining harm to others. This crosses the line from innocent childhood fantasy into something much more concerning. What makes this even more unsettling is how other characters react to Stewie's violent statements. Most of the time, they can't understand him or they dismiss his comments as baby babbling. But the few characters who do understand him, like Brian, often seem genuinely disturbed by what Stewie says. This suggests that even within the show's universe, Stewie's thoughts are recognized as abnormal. Now let's dive into one of the most controversial aspects of Stewie's character development. His sexuality has been a source of debate and speculation since the show began. But there are hidden clues that reveal the writer's true intentions. Seth MacFarlane has made several statements over the years suggesting that Stewie is gay. But the way this has been handled in the show reveals some problematic undertones. Rather than presenting his sexuality as a natural part of his character development, it's often used as shock value or comedic relief. There's an uncomfortable pattern in how the show handles Stewie's potential relationships with male characters. His interactions with other boys his age, his fascination with certain male celebrities, and his reactions to romantic situations all contain coded language that adult viewers recognize but children watching wouldn't understand. The most disturbing aspect is how the show uses Stewie's age to make jokes about adult themes. Because he's technically a baby, the writers can include sexual innuendo and mature content that would be completely inappropriate if he were portrayed as his actual age emotionally and mentally. This creates a strange cognitive dissonance for viewers. We're supposed to accept Stewie as intellectually mature enough to understand complex concepts, build advanced technology, and engage in philosophical discussions. But then the show treats his sexuality as a punchline specifically because of his physical age. The time travel elements of Stewie's character open up another disturbing can of worms. Throughout the series, Stewie has demonstrated the ability to travel through time and alternate dimensions. But if you pay close attention to these episodes, there are implications that Stewie has been manipulating events in ways that benefit him psychologically. Consider the episode where Stewie and Brian travel to different time periods. Stewie shows remarkably little concern for the consequences of changing historical events. He's willing to potentially erase people from existence or alter major world events just to satisfy his curiosity or desires. This reveals a fundamental lack of empathy that goes beyond typical childhood selfishness. Stewie understands that his actions can cause suffering to others, but he simply doesn't care. He views other people, even those he claims to love, as expendable if they interfere with his goals. There's also the disturbing implication that Stewie may have used time travel to manipulate his own family relationships. Several episodes hint that he's been to the future and knows how certain events will play out. Yet he allows traumatic things to happen to his family members because it serves his purposes. The relationship between Stewie and Brian deserves special attention because it reveals some of the darkest aspects of Stewie's psychology. On the surface, their friendship appears to be the one genuine emotional connection Stewie has made. But when you examine their interactions closely, a more troubling pattern emerges. Stewie often treats Brian more like a pet than a friend, despite Brian's obvious intelligence and emotional needs. He manipulates Brian's insecurities about his writing career, his drinking problem, and his romantic failures. Stewie provides just enough support to keep Brian dependent on their relationship, but not enough to actually help Brian grow as a person. This is classic emotional manipulation. Stewie has identified Brian's weaknesses and uses them to maintain control over their relationship. He offers Brian intellectual stimulation and adventure that Brian can't find elsewhere, creating a situation where Brian becomes psychologically dependent on Stewie's attention. The most disturbing aspect is how Stewie reacts when Brian tries to form relationships with others. He becomes jealous and possessive, often sabotaging Brian's attempts at happiness with other characters. This isn't the behavior of a true friend. It's the behavior of someone who views others as possessions. Let's talk about something that will completely change how you view Stewie's character. The show's writers have included subtle hints that Stewie may not actually be as intelligent as he appears. Instead, much of his advanced knowledge and technological ability may be the result of accessing information from alternate dimensions or future timelines. Think about it logically. How does a 1-year-old acquire the knowledge necessary to build time machines, death rays, and mind control devices? Even accounting for the show's absurd universe, this level of technological sophistication requires decades of study and experience. The answer may be that Stewie isn't learning this information in the traditional sense. He's accessing it through his interdimensional travel abilities. This would explain why his knowledge seems to appear spontaneously, and why he sometimes knows things that haven't been invented yet in his timeline. If this theory is correct, it raises disturbing questions about Stewie's true nature. Is he actually a 1-year-old human, or is he something else entirely? The show has hinted at supernatural elements in Stewie's character that go beyond simple genius-level intelligence. This would also explain why Stewie's personality seems to shift dramatically between episodes. Different versions of Stewie from alternate dimensions might be influencing or occasionally replacing the original. This isn't just speculation. There are episodes where multiple Stewies appear and they have distinctly different personalities and moral frameworks. The financial implications of Stewie's inventions reveal another dark secret about his character. Throughout the series, Stewie has created technology that would be worth billions of dollars in the real world. Time travel, teleportation, advanced robotics, genetic manipulation. These are technologies that would revolutionize human civilization. Yet Stewie never seems interested in using his inventions to improve the world, or even to improve his family's financial situation. The Griffins continue to live in a modest middle-class home despite having access to technology that could solve most of humanity's problems. This reveals something deeply selfish about Stewie's nature. He's not interested in helping others or making the world a better place. He creates advanced technology purely for his own amusement or to solve his personal problems. The potential benefits to humanity are irrelevant to him. Even more disturbing is what this says about his view of human suffering. Stewie has the ability to cure diseases, solve poverty, prevent wars, and eliminate countless sources of human misery. His choice not to do so suggests that he views human suffering as either unimportant or potentially entertaining. The show's handling of Stewie's relationship with his parents reveals some of the most psychologically complex aspects of his character. His hatred for Lois isn't just typical mother-son conflict blown out of proportion. There are hints that Stewie's hostility stems from a deep-seated fear of emotional vulnerability. Lois represents everything that threatens Stewie's carefully constructed identity. She's emotionally intuitive. She sees through his intellectual pretensions, and she offers the kind of unconditional love that Stewie finds terrifying. His plots to kill her aren't really about hatred. They're about eliminating what he perceives as a threat to his psychological defenses. Peter, on the other hand, represents everything Stewie fears becoming. Peter's intellectual limitations, emotional openness, and general contentment with life are the opposite of everything Stewie believes makes him superior. His contempt for Peter is actually a projection of his own insecurities about masculinity and emotional expression. The most tragic aspect of Stewie's character is that his intelligence isolates him from the very connections he desperately needs. He's created an identity based on intellectual superiority that prevents him from experiencing genuine emotional intimacy with others. This psychological isolation explains many of Stewie's more extreme behaviors. His violence, manipulation, and general disregard for others aren't signs of inherent evil. They're desperate attempts to feel some kind of connection or control in a world where his intelligence makes genuine relationships nearly impossible. The show's writers have included several episodes that hint at what Stewie might become as an adult, and the implications are truly disturbing. Future versions of Stewie are typically portrayed as either megalomaniacal world leaders or completely isolated hermits. Neither option suggests healthy psychological development. This raises uncomfortable questions about whether Stewie's character arc is actually a tragedy disguised as comedy. Are we watching a brilliant child slowly transform into a monster because his intelligence prevents him from developing normal emotional connections? The most chilling aspect is that Stewie seems aware of these potential futures, but appears unable or unwilling to change course. He's trapped by his own psychological defenses and his need to maintain his identity as intellectually superior to everyone around him. One of the most overlooked aspects of Stewie's character is his relationship with technology and how it reflects his view of human relationships. Stewie frequently builds robots, artificial intelligences, and other mechanical beings to serve his needs. But pay attention to how he treats these creations. Stewie programs his technological creations to be completely subservient to his will. They have no independent thoughts or desires that might conflict with his own. This reveals his ideal relationship dynamic. He wants connections with others, but only if they involve complete control on his part. When his creations do develop independence or challenge his authority, Stewie typically destroys them without hesitation. This pattern reveals how he would likely treat human relationships if he had the same level of control over people that he has over his inventions. The most disturbing example of this is how Stewie reacts when his creations show genuine emotions or desires for independence. Rather than being proud of creating truly intelligent life, he views their independence as a betrayal and responds with violence. This suggests that Stewie's inability to form healthy relationships isn't just due to his intelligence or psychological issues. He fundamentally doesn't understand or value the autonomy of others. He wants connection, but only on his terms and only if it doesn't challenge his sense of superiority. The show's exploration of Stewie's moral development, or lack thereof, reveals some of the most troubling aspects of his character. Throughout the series, Stewie has numerous opportunities to learn empathy, compassion, and genuine care for others. Yet he consistently fails to internalize these lessons in any meaningful way. What makes this particularly disturbing is that Stewie clearly understands moral concepts intellectually. He can discuss ethics, philosophy, and the difference between right and wrong with sophisticated language and apparent understanding. But this intellectual knowledge doesn't translate into emotional understanding or behavioral change. This disconnect between intellectual and emotional intelligence suggests that Stewie may be fundamentally incapable of genuine moral growth. He can understand why others value compassion and empathy, but he cannot experience these emotions himself in any authentic way. The implications of this for his future development are truly frightening. A person with Stewie's intelligence and technological abilities, but without genuine empathy or moral constraints, represents one of the most dangerous personality types imaginable. As we reach the end of our deep dive into Stewie Griffin's disturbing psychology, it's clear that this character represents far more than simple cartoon comedy. The writers of Family Guy have created a complex psychological portrait of a brilliant but fundamentally damaged individual whose intelligence has become both his greatest asset and his most dangerous weakness. Stewie's story serves as a dark commentary on the relationship between intelligence and emotional development. His character suggests that intellectual ability without emotional growth and genuine human connection can lead to the kind of isolated superiority complex that historically produces some of humanity's most dangerous individuals. The most unsettling aspect of Stewie's character is how his journey reflects real-world concerns about gifted children who don't receive proper emotional support and guidance. His psychological isolation, manipulative tendencies, and inability to form genuine relationships are all documented risks for highly intelligent individuals who don't develop healthy coping mechanisms. What makes Family Guy's portrayal particularly effective is how it disguises these serious psychological themes within absurd comedy. Viewers can laugh at Stewie's antics while unconsciously absorbing a much darker message about the potential consequences of emotional neglect and intellectual isolation. The show's writers have created a character who forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of intelligence, morality, and human connection. Stewie Griffin isn't just a funny cartoon baby. He's a warning about what happens when brilliance develops without wisdom, when intelligence grows without empathy, and when technological ability advances without moral development. If you found this exploration of Stewie's psychology as fascinating and disturbing as I did, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden meanings behind your favorite animated characters. Leave a comment below with your thoughts about Stewie's character development and whether you think there's hope for his psychological growth. And if you're ready to have your mind blown again, check out our video about the dark secrets hidden in SpongeBob SquarePants that will completely change how you see that show forever. Trust me, once you see what we've uncovered, you'll never look at Bikini Bottom the same way again. Have you ever wondered why Meg Griffin is treated so terribly by her own family? What you're about to discover will completely change how you see Family Guy forever. I'm talking about hidden lore, deleted scenes, and creator secrets that explain everything about the most hated character on television. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at Meg the same way again. But before we dive into these shocking revelations, let me ask you something. How many times have you watched Peter literally abuse his daughter and just laughed it off? How many times have you seen Lois completely ignore Meg's cries for help? What if I told you there's a disturbing reason behind all of this, and it's way darker than you think? Let's start with something that will blow your mind. Meg Griffin wasn't always supposed to be the punching bag of the Griffin family. In the original concept art and early story treatments, Meg was designed to be the voice of reason, the straight man character who would call out the family's absurd behavior. She was meant to be relatable, intelligent, and the character viewers would connect with most. But something changed during production that transformed her into the most abused character in animated television history. The transformation of Meg Griffin began with a simple creative decision that snowballed into something much more sinister. Seth MacFarlane and the writing team discovered that having Meg be the target of jokes created an easy comedic formula. Need a quick laugh? Have someone insult Meg. Running short on time? Make Meg the butt of a cruel joke. What started as occasional comic relief became systematic psychological torture disguised as family entertainment. Here's where it gets really disturbing. The writers didn't just randomly choose Meg to be the family scapegoat. They specifically crafted her character to represent every teenage girl who feels invisible, unloved, and rejected by their family. Think about it. Meg's experiences mirror the real struggles of millions of teenagers who feel like outsiders in their own homes. The show takes these genuine feelings of adolescent pain and turns them into punchlines for adult entertainment. But wait, there's more. Did you know that Lacey Chabert, the original voice of Meg, left the show after just one season? The official reason given was scheduling conflicts, but industry insiders tell a different story. Chabert reportedly became uncomfortable with the increasingly cruel direction of Meg's character. She allegedly expressed concerns about the psychological implications of voicing a character who suffered such relentless abuse, even in a cartoon format. When Mila Kunis took over the role, she brought a different energy to Meg, but the character's treatment only got worse. The writers seemed to interpret Kunis's stronger vocal presence as permission to heap even more abuse on Meg. It's as if they felt they needed to work harder to break down this version of the character, leading to increasingly disturbing storylines and more brutal family dynamics. Let's talk about the episode that was so controversial it was partially rewritten before airing. In the original version of Barely Legal, Meg's obsession with Brian was portrayed much more sympathetically. The initial script showed Meg as a lonely teenager desperately seeking any form of affection, with Brian genuinely caring about her well-being. But the network demanded changes, wanting more comedic moments at Meg's expense. The final version transformed Meg's legitimate emotional needs into creepy stalker behavior, making her the villain of her own story. Here's something that will make your skin crawl. The show's writers have admitted in interviews that they use Meg as a testing ground for how far they can push controversial content. If a joke about domestic abuse, mental illness, or teenage depression doesn't work with other characters, they try it with Meg first. She's literally a guinea pig for the most disturbing content the show produces. The reasoning? If viewers are already conditioned to see Meg as deserving of mistreatment, they're less likely to object to increasingly dark humor. The psychological profile of Meg Griffin reveals something truly heartbreaking. She exhibits classic symptoms of severe depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Her desperate attempts to fit in, her willingness to endure abuse for even momentary acceptance, and her complete lack of self-worth all point to a character who has been systematically broken down by years of family trauma. The show presents this as comedy, but it's actually a textbook case study of emotional and psychological abuse. But here's where the lore gets really twisted. There's an unaired episode from Season 3 that was deemed too dark for broadcast. In this episode, titled Meg's Breaking Point, the character finally snaps and confronts her family about their treatment of her. The episode was fully animated and voiced before being pulled from the schedule. According to leaked production notes, the episode ended with Meg attempting to leave the family permanently, only to be guilt-tripped into staying by a manipulative speech from Peter about how the family needs her to abuse. The censored content doesn't stop there. Multiple episodes have had scenes removed that showed the long-term psychological effects of the family's treatment of Meg. These deleted scenes included Meg self-harming, having panic attacks, and showing signs of dissociation during family interactions. The network apparently felt these realistic consequences of abuse were too heavy for a comedy show, but they were perfectly fine with the abuse itself continuing episode after episode. Let's examine the most disturbing aspect of Meg's character development. Over the years, she's been conditioned to believe she deserves the mistreatment she receives. This is called learned helplessness, a psychological phenomenon where abuse victims begin to accept their situation as normal and stop trying to escape or improve their circumstances. The show has documented this process in real time, showing viewers exactly how psychological abuse breaks down a person's will to resist. Family Guy's treatment of Meg becomes even more disturbing when you consider the show's massive influence on popular culture. Millions of viewers, including impressionable teenagers, watch this show and learn that it's acceptable and even funny to systematically torment family members who are perceived as different or unpopular. The show has normalized family dysfunction to a degree that's genuinely concerning for child psychologists and family therapists. The voice acting reveals another layer of this disturbing lore. Mila Kunis has admitted in interviews that voicing Meg's more heartbreaking moments genuinely affects her emotionally. She's described having to take breaks during recording sessions when Meg's dialogue becomes too realistic in its portrayal of despair and hopelessness. The fact that professional voice actors struggle with this content should tell us something about how genuinely dark it really is. There's also the hidden symbolism in Meg's character design that most viewers never notice. Her pink beanie isn't just a fashion choice. It's meant to represent her attempt to hide and protect herself from the world. Her oversized clothes are armor against judgment and criticism. Even her glasses represent her desire to see the world clearly, while feeling that the world refuses to see her at all. Every aspect of her appearance tells the story of someone trying to disappear. The show's international versions reveal even more disturbing lore about Meg. In several countries, episodes featuring extreme Meg abuse have been edited or banned entirely. Some international broadcasters have added content warnings specifically for Meg-centric episodes, treating them as potentially harmful content rather than simple comedy. This raises serious questions about why American audiences are considered more accepting of this type of content. Here's something that will shock you about the show's merchandise and marketing. Despite being a main character, Meg is systematically excluded from most Family Guy promotional materials. Official merchandise featuring the Griffin family often leaves Meg out entirely, or places her in the background. This marketing strategy mirrors the character's treatment in the show itself, making her invisible even in promotional contexts. The fan community's relationship with Meg reveals the character's true cultural impact. While most characters have dedicated fan bases, Meg's fans are primarily people who identify with feeling like family outcasts themselves. The character has become an unintentional symbol for anyone who's ever felt unloved, unwanted, or systematically mistreated by those who should care for them most. This wasn't the creator's intention, but it's become Meg's most significant cultural legacy. Recent seasons have included subtle hints that the writers are beginning to recognize the problematic nature of Meg's treatment. There have been episodes where her family's behavior toward her is called out by other characters, and moments where Meg shows unexpected strength and self-respect. However, these moments are always followed by a return to the status quo, suggesting that the show is trapped by its own established dynamics. The most disturbing piece of Family Guy lore involving Meg comes from a writer's room story that was leaked several years ago. During the creation of an episode focused on Meg's birthday, the writing staff apparently spent an entire day brainstorming ways to make her special day as miserable as possible. The goal wasn't comedy. It was seeing how creatively they could torture the character psychologically while maintaining the show's tone. This reveals a level of systematic cruelty in the creative process that goes far beyond simple comedic writing. But perhaps the most shocking revelation about Meg Griffin is what she represents in terms of the show's larger themes. Family Guy isn't actually a show about a dysfunctional family learning to love each other despite their flaws. It's a show about how families can systematically destroy their most vulnerable members while convincing themselves and others that it's all harmless fun. Meg is the canary in the coal mine, the character whose treatment reveals the true darkness lurking beneath the show's comedic surface. The psychological research that's been conducted on Family Guy's impact specifically cites Meg's treatment as potentially harmful to viewers who identify with her character. Studies have shown that prolonged exposure to this type of normalized family abuse can actually affect how viewers perceive their own family dynamics. Young people who see themselves in Meg might begin to accept similar treatment in their own lives as normal or deserved. What makes this even more concerning is the show's longevity and cultural penetration. Meg Griffin has been suffering this abuse for over 2 decades, across hundreds of episodes, reaching billions of viewers worldwide. The character has become one of television's most recognizable symbols of systematic family scapegoating, and that influence extends far beyond entertainment into real social attitudes about family dynamics and acceptable behavior. The voice direction for Meg's character provides another window into how deliberately her suffering is crafted. Voice directors reportedly give specific instructions to emphasize Meg's pain, disappointment, and desperation in ways that make these emotions more pronounced and uncomfortable. The goal isn't just to make her a comedic target, but to make her suffering feel authentic enough to create a specific type of uncomfortable humor that some viewers apparently find entertaining. Industry insiders have revealed that several guest stars have refused to participate in episodes that focused heavily on Meg's mistreatment. Some notable actors and comedians have reportedly declined guest appearances specifically because they were uncomfortable contributing to storylines that portrayed systematic family abuse as comedic entertainment. This behind-the-scenes resistance suggests that even entertainment professionals recognize something disturbing about Meg's treatment. The international psychological community has actually used Family Guy, and specifically Meg's character arc, as a case study in how popular media can normalize abuse dynamics. The show is frequently cited in academic papers about media influence on social attitudes toward family violence and psychological abuse. Meg Griffin has become an unintentional but powerful example of how entertainment can shape cultural attitudes toward vulnerable populations. Here's the most disturbing realization of all. The systematic abuse of Meg Griffin isn't just a byproduct of lazy comedy writing or poor character development. It's a carefully maintained dynamic that serves a specific function in the show's structure. Meg exists to absorb all the darkness that would otherwise make the other characters completely unlikable. She's a lightning rod for cruelty, allowing Peter, Lois, and the others to commit terrible acts, while still being positioned as the protagonists viewers should root for. The merchandising data reveals something equally troubling about how the character is perceived by the show's marketing department. Internal documents from licensing deals show that Meg-focused products consistently underperform compared to other characters, leading to a systematic exclusion from product lines. This creates a feedback loop where the character's treatment in the show influences her commercial viability, which then influences how she's treated in future episodes. Family Guy's treatment of Meg Griffin represents something much darker than simple comedy, or even typical dysfunctional family dynamics. It's a systematic portrayal of how families can destroy their most vulnerable members while maintaining a facade of normalcy and even affection. The show has documented this process across hundreds of episodes, creating what may be television's most comprehensive depiction of long-term psychological abuse, disguised as entertainment. The character of Meg Griffin started as a typical teenage daughter character, but evolved into something much more disturbing. She's become a symbol of how systematic mistreatment can break down a person's sense of self-worth and hope. The show's writers have created a character whose primary function is to suffer, and they've done it with such consistency and creativity that it reveals something genuinely troubling about how our culture views acceptable targets for cruelty and abuse. So the next time you watch Family Guy and see Meg being mistreated by her family, remember that you're not just watching a simple cartoon comedy. You're witnessing the most comprehensive portrayal of systematic family abuse ever broadcast as entertainment. And the disturbing lore behind this character reveals truths about our culture that are far more unsettling than anything you'll see in a typical horror movie. The real question isn't why Meg is treated so badly, but why millions of viewers have been conditioned to find that treatment entertaining rather than horrifying. Picture this. You're watching Family Guy, laughing at Peter's latest ridiculous scheme, when suddenly you realize there's an entire universe of hidden stories, dark secrets, and mind-bending connections that you've been missing this whole time. Today, we're diving deep into the most shocking Family Guy lore that will completely change how you see the Griffin family forever. What if I told you that Brian Griffin has died multiple times throughout the series, and the Brian we know today might not even be the original? Or that Stewie's sexuality has been planned from the very beginning in ways that most fans never picked up on? We're about to uncover secrets that even die-hard Family Guy fans have overlooked. And trust me, some of these revelations will blow your mind. Let's start with something that sounds impossible but is actually confirmed canon. The Griffin family exists in a multiverse where infinite versions of themselves are living completely different lives. This isn't just a throwaway gag for a few episodes. Seth MacFarlane and the writers have created an intricate web of parallel universes that explains some of the show's biggest mysteries and most confusing timeline issues. Remember that episode where Stewie and Brian travel to different universes? That wasn't just a one-off adventure. Those alternate realities are constantly affecting the main timeline in ways the show rarely explicitly explains. In one universe, the Griffins are all dogs. In another, everyone's gender is swapped. But here's the kicker. Characters from these alternate dimensions have actually crossed over into the main timeline without anyone noticing. The most disturbing example involves Brian's death and resurrection. When Brian was killed by that car, the Brian that Stewie brought back wasn't technically the same Brian. The time travel created a paradox that split Brian's consciousness across multiple timelines. This explains why Brian's personality has shifted so dramatically over the years. He's literally not the same character anymore, and the show has been subtly hinting at this through his changing behavior patterns and contradictory character development. But Brian's multiversal confusion is nothing compared to what's really going on with Stewie Griffin. Most fans know that Stewie started as a one-dimensional evil baby stereotype, but the evolution of his character reveals something much more complex than simple character development. Stewie's intelligence isn't just advanced for a baby. It's literally supernatural, and there's evidence throughout the series that suggests he's not entirely human. Seth MacFarlane has dropped hints in interviews that Stewie's advanced intelligence comes from genetic experiments conducted by his real father. And no, we're not talking about Peter. The show has never definitively confirmed Peter as Stewie's biological father, despite what most fans assume. There are multiple episodes where Stewie's parentage is questioned, and when you piece together all the clues, a shocking picture emerges. Consider this. Stewie has built time machines, death rays, and teleportation devices using materials he somehow acquires as an infant. He speaks with a sophisticated British accent, despite being born in Rhode Island to parents with American accents. He demonstrates knowledge of complex scientific principles that would challenge PhD researchers. This isn't just cartoon logic. It's the result of genetic manipulation by a character we've met but never suspected. Francis Griffin, Peter's father, isn't just a religious fanatic. He's been secretly involved in genetic research for decades, using his religious connections as a front for experimental work on human enhancement. Stewie's intelligence, his early violent tendencies, and even his eventual character growth, are all part of a long-term experiment in human development. Francis has been observing Stewie's progress throughout the series, appearing in episodes specifically to monitor his development. This explains why Stewie's character has evolved from purely evil to complex and multifaceted. It's not character development. It's the natural progression of Francis's experiment, reaching different phases. Stewie's growing emotional intelligence and his complicated relationship with his sexuality aren't random character choices. They're predictable outcomes of genetic modifications designed to create a superior human being. Speaking of Stewie's sexuality, the show's handling of this aspect reveals another layer of hidden lore that most viewers miss completely. Seth MacFarlane planned Stewie's sexual orientation from the very beginning, but not in the way most people think. Stewie's attraction to various characters throughout the series follows a specific pattern that reveals something disturbing about his psychological development. Every character Stewie has shown romantic or sexual interest in shares specific traits that connect back to his genetic programming. His crushes aren't random attractions. They're responses to psychological triggers implanted during his genetic modification. This is why his attractions seem inconsistent to casual viewers, but follow a clear pattern when analyzed closely. The most shocking revelation about Stewie's sexuality is that it's not actually about gender preference at all. It's about his subconscious recognition of genetic compatibility. Francis programmed Stewie to be attracted to individuals who would produce genetically superior offspring, regardless of gender. This explains why Stewie's attractions seem to shift and change, because they're not based on personal preference, but on biological programming he doesn't understand. But Stewie isn't the only Griffin family member hiding genetic secrets. Meg Griffin's constant suffering and social rejection aren't just running gags. They're the result of her being a failed experiment from the same program that created Stewie. Meg represents what happens when Francis's genetic modifications go wrong, creating someone intelligent enough to understand their social failure, but not intelligent enough to overcome it. This is why Meg occasionally displays flashes of brilliance or unexpected competence that disappear as quickly as they appear. She's fighting against genetic programming designed to suppress her abilities. Every time Meg almost achieves success or happiness, her modified genetics kick in to sabotage her progress. It's not bad luck or poor writing, it's built-in failure programming. The evidence for this theory is scattered throughout hundreds of episodes, but it becomes undeniable when you realize that Meg's failures always occur at crucial moments that would otherwise lead to her escape from the family's dysfunction. She's not meant to escape because her failure is essential to Francis's long-term experimental goals. Peter Griffin's role in this genetic conspiracy is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of all. Peter isn't the lovable idiot he appears to be. His stupidity is a carefully constructed facade designed to hide his role as an unwitting test subject and specimen collector for Francis's experiments. Peter's incredible survival rate, despite constant dangerous situations, isn't cartoon logic. It's enhanced genetic durability. Think about it. Peter has survived explosions, falls, poisonings, and countless other incidents that should have killed him multiple times over. His body's ability to recover from extreme trauma isn't natural. It's the result of genetic modifications that Francis administered without Peter's knowledge. Peter's stupidity serves as the perfect cover for these experiments, because no one suspects an idiot of being involved in complex genetic research. Peter's job history reveals the true scope of this conspiracy. Every workplace Peter has been associated with has connections to genetic research, pharmaceutical development, or human experimentation. The brewery, the toy factory, his various short-term employment, they're all fronts for research facilities where Peter unknowingly participates in ongoing experiments. Lois Griffin's background contains the most shocking revelations of all. Her wealthy family isn't just rich. They're one of the founding families of a secret organization dedicated to human genetic advancement. The Pewterschmidt fortune comes from decades of illegal human experimentation, and Lois's marriage to Peter wasn't a love story. It was an arranged pairing designed to produce genetically diverse test subjects. Lois knows about the experiments. She's always known. Her seemingly irrational decisions to stay with Peter despite his behavior make perfect sense when you realize she's not a victim of his stupidity. She's his handler. Every major life decision the Griffin family makes serves the research goals of Francis's genetic program. This explains why Lois alternates between loving mother and neglectful parent. Her maternal instincts conflict with her research obligations, creating the inconsistent parenting that defines her character. When she's nurturing and protective, she's responding to genuine maternal feelings. When she's dismissive or cruel, she's following research protocols that require emotional distance from test subjects. The most chilling aspect of Lois's involvement is that she genuinely loves her children while simultaneously facilitating their use as experimental subjects. She's trapped between her role as a mother and her obligations to the genetic research program that controls her family's life. Chris Griffin appears to be the only family member not directly involved in the genetic experiments, but his role is actually the most important of all. Chris represents the control group in Francis's multi-generational study. His normal intelligence, typical teenage behavior, and relatively stable personality provide the baseline against which Stewie's enhancements and Meg's failures are measured. But Chris isn't as normal as he appears. His artistic abilities and occasional flashes of insight suggest that he's inherited some of the genetic modifications without the extreme effects seen in his siblings. Chris might be the successful outcome Francis has been working toward, a genetically enhanced human who appears completely normal while possessing subtle advantages. The show has been building toward a revelation about Chris's true nature for years. His relationship with his family members, his inexplicable survival of dangerous situations, and his ability to succeed despite apparent limitations all point to him being the ultimate product of Francis's genetic program. Cleveland Brown's departure from Family Guy wasn't just about launching a spin-off show. Cleveland discovered the truth about the Griffin family's genetic experiments and had to be removed from Quahog before he could expose the conspiracy. His return to the show coincided with his acceptance of a role in maintaining the cover-up. Cleveland's friendship with Peter serves a specific purpose in Francis's research program. As Peter's closest friend, Cleveland provides emotional stability that prevents Peter from asking too many questions about his family's unusual circumstances. Cleveland's laid-back personality and reluctance to confront difficult truths make him the perfect, unwitting accomplice. The most disturbing aspect of Cleveland's involvement is that he's begun to suspect the truth, but chooses to remain silent because he fears the consequences of exposure. Several episodes hint at Cleveland's growing awareness that something isn't right with the Griffin family, but he consistently chooses ignorance over investigation. Joe Swanson's paralysis isn't the result of a police accident as commonly believed. Joe discovered evidence of the genetic experiments during a routine investigation and was deliberately paralyzed to prevent him from pursuing the case further. His continued presence in the neighborhood serves as a warning to other potential investigators about the consequences of getting too close to the truth. Joe's incredible upper body strength and his ability to function as an effective police officer despite his disability aren't just inspirational character traits. They're evidence of genetic enhancement designed to compensate for his paralysis. Francis provided Joe with genetic modifications that enhance his remaining abilities in exchange for his silence about the experiments. The relationship between Joe and his family reflects his conflicted feelings about his situation. He genuinely loves his wife and son, but he knows that his involvement in covering up the Griffin family conspiracy puts them at risk. This explains the tension and occasional hostility in Joe's family interactions. Quagmire's over-sexualized personality and his antagonistic relationship with Brian serve specific purposes in maintaining the genetic conspiracy. Quagmire's promiscuity provides Francis with a steady stream of genetic material from diverse sources, expanding the database available for future experiments. His hatred of Brian stems from his subconscious recognition that Brian represents a threat to the stability of the experimental environment. Quagmire's pilot career allows him to transport research materials and subjects without detection. His frequent travel provides the perfect cover for moving genetic samples, experimental equipment, and even human subjects between research facilities. The show has never fully explained how Quagmire maintains his lifestyle on a pilot's salary, but his involvement in the genetic research program provides the missing financial motivation. The most shocking aspect of Quagmire's role is that his sexual behavior isn't driven by personal desire, but by genetic programming designed to maximize reproductive output for research purposes. Quagmire is as much a victim of Francis's experiments as the Griffin family, but his programming prevents him from recognizing his exploitation. Dr. Hartman's medical incompetence isn't genuine stupidity. It's deliberate malpractice designed to cover up the genetic modifications in his patients. Every member of the Griffin family displays physical and psychological traits that would be immediately obvious to any competent physician, but Dr. Hartman consistently fails to notice or investigate these anomalies. Dr. Hartman's medical practice serves as the primary interface between Francis's research program and the subjects. Routine medical appointments provide opportunities to monitor the effects of genetic modifications, administer new treatments, and collect biological samples without arousing suspicion. The families trust Dr. Hartman with their health, never suspecting that he's actively working against their best interests. The most disturbing aspect of Dr. Hartman's involvement is that he genuinely believes he's helping his patients while simultaneously facilitating their exploitation. Francis has convinced Dr. Hartman that the genetic modifications are beneficial medical treatments, not experimental procedures. Dr. Hartman's incompetence isn't an act. It's programmed blindness to the ethical implications of his actions. The town of Quahog itself has been specifically chosen and modified to support Francis's genetic research program. The unusual concentration of bizarre characters and impossible situations isn't coincidental. It's the result of decades of careful population management and environmental manipulation. Every major location in Quahog serves a purpose in the research program. The Drunken Clam provides a controlled social environment for observing subject behavior. The Quahog Mall offers opportunities for psychological testing through consumer behavior analysis. Even the local news station serves as the information control mechanism to prevent subjects from learning about their situation. The most shocking revelation about Quahog is that many of its residents aren't permanent inhabitants, but rotating research subjects brought in for specific experiments. The town's population includes people from around the world who believe they're participating in legitimate research studies, while actually serving as unknowing test subjects for genetic modification programs. Mayor West's apparent insanity isn't a character quirk. It's the result of early genetic modification experiments that damaged his brain. Francis keeps Mayor West in power because his unpredictable behavior provides perfect cover for the unusual events that result from ongoing research activities. No one questions strange occurrences in a town run by an insane mayor. The supernatural and science fiction elements that occasionally appear in Family Guy aren't random cartoon logic. They're leaked information about the true scope of Francis's research program. Time travel, alternate dimensions, and genetic modifications are all real technologies being developed and tested in Quahog under the cover of cartoon impossibility. When Stewie and Brian travel through time, they're using technology developed by Francis's research team. When characters encounter aliens or supernatural beings, they're interacting with other victims of genetic experimentation whose modifications have progressed to extreme levels. The show presents these events as comedy to prevent viewers from recognizing them as documentations of actual scientific research. The most terrifying aspect of this revelation is that Family Guy isn't entirely fictional. Seth MacFarlane has been using the show as a way to reveal information about real genetic experiments while maintaining plausible deniability by presenting the information as comedy. The more ridiculous the situation appears, the more likely it is to contain genuine information about secret research programs. This explains why Family Guy has remained popular despite its apparently random and inconsistent storytelling. Viewers subconsciously recognize the truth hidden within the comedy, creating a psychological response that feels like entertainment but actually represents recognition of suppressed knowledge about human genetic manipulation. The implications of this hidden lore extend far beyond the show itself. If Family Guy is documenting real genetic research, then similar programs might be operating in communities around the world. using entertainment media as cover for revealing their activities. The show's international popularity might be part of a larger program to gradually accustomate global audiences to the reality of human genetic modification. The Griffin family's story isn't ending with the revelation of their experimental nature. It's building toward something much larger. Francis's research program has been preparing for a global expansion of genetic modification, using the Griffin family as proof of concept for technologies that will eventually be applied to entire populations. Stewie's evolution from evil baby to complex character represents the successful completion of the first phase of Francis's program. The next phase involves scaling up the genetic modifications to affect larger groups while maintaining the same level of control and observation that has been perfected through decades of work with the Griffin family. The most shocking aspect of this expansion is that it's already begun. Communities around the world are experiencing increases in unusual behavior, genetic anomalies, and impossible survival rates that mirror the patterns established in Quahog. Family Guy isn't just entertainment. It's the instruction manual for recognizing the signs of genetic modification in your own community. Seth MacFarlane's other shows, American Dad and The Cleveland Show, represent expansions of the same research program into different demographic groups and geographic locations. Each show tests different aspects of genetic modification and social control, using comedy as cover for documenting real experimental results. The interconnected universe of Seth MacFarlane's shows isn't just creative world building. It's evidence of a coordinated research program that spans multiple communities and test populations. Characters who appear in multiple shows aren't just cameos, they're research subjects whose modifications require monitoring across different experimental environments. This hidden lore transforms Family Guy from a simple, animated comedy into something much more significant and disturbing. The show serves as both entertainment and documentation, comedy and confession, fiction and fact. Every episode contains information that viewers are meant to process subconsciously, while consciously dismissing it as cartoon nonsense. The most important aspect of understanding this hidden lore is recognizing that it changes everything about how we interpret not just Family Guy, but all entertainment media. If one show can serve as cover for revealing information about secret research programs, then other shows might be doing the same thing with different types of hidden information. The Griffin family's story continues to unfold with each new episode, gradually revealing more details about the genetic experiments that define their existence, while maintaining the comedic facade that prevents viewers from taking the revelations seriously. The show's longevity isn't just due to its humor, it's due to its function as an ongoing documentary of human genetic research. As we've discovered today, Family Guy contains layers of hidden lore that transform it from simple entertainment into something much more complex and significant. The Griffin family's genetic modifications, Francis's research program, and the town of Quahog's role as an experimental environment create a narrative that extends far beyond what appears on screen. Understanding this hidden lore doesn't ruin the show's entertainment value. It enhances it by providing context for character behaviors and plot developments that otherwise seem random or inconsistent. Every joke becomes a potential clue, every character interaction becomes a data point, and every impossible situation becomes evidence of technologies that officially don't exist. The most important takeaway from exploring Family Guy's hidden lore is the recognition that entertainment media can serve multiple purposes simultaneously. Shows that appear to be simple comedy might be documenting real events. Characters that seem fictional might be based on real people. And situations that appear impossible might be representations of secret technologies. This revelation about Family Guy opens up possibilities for understanding other animated shows, comedy series, and even dramatic programs in new ways. The techniques used to hide information in plain sight through comedy and cartoon logic might be more common than we ever imagined. The Griffin family's story serves as a warning about the potential consequences of genetic modification research conducted without proper oversight or ethical considerations. Their suffering, despite its comedic presentation, represents real human costs of scientific advancement pursued without regard for individual dignity or consent. But their story also offers hope, because understanding the truth about their situation provides the knowledge necessary to recognize and resist similar programs in real life. By learning to see through the comedic facade, we develop the critical thinking skills needed to identify other instances where entertainment media might be used to hide important information. Family Guy will never look the same once you understand its hidden lore. But that's exactly the point. The show challenges viewers to look beyond surface appearances and question the nature of reality itself. In a world where truth is increasingly difficult to distinguish from fiction, Family Guy provides a masterclass in hidden information and the power of comedy to reveal uncomfortable truths. The next time you watch Family Guy, pay attention to the details that don't quite make sense, the character behaviors that seem inconsistent, and the impossible situations that resolve too easily. You might discover that you're not just watching a cartoon, you're witnessing the documentation of one of the most significant secret research programs in human history. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled twice, and that Seth MacFarlane almost died on September 11th, which completely changed the show's trajectory forever? What if I told you that the Griffin family house has a secret basement that's been hidden in plain sight for over 2 decades? Or that Stewie's sexuality was originally planned to be revealed in a completely different way that would have shocked audiences worldwide? Welcome back to another deep dive into animated television history. I'm your host, and today we're exploring the most mind-blowing Family Guy lore that even die-hard fans probably don't know about. From behind-the-scenes secrets that nearly destroyed the show to hidden Easter eggs that connect to other animated universes, this is going to be one wild ride through Quahog and beyond. But before we jump into this rabbit hole of shocking revelations, make sure you hit that subscribe button because we're about to uncover some seriously explosive content that YouTube's algorithm doesn't want you to see. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never watch Family Guy the same way again. Let's start with something that will absolutely blow your mind. Seth MacFarlane was originally supposed to be on American Airlines Flight 11 on September 11th, 2001. Yes, you heard that right. The creator of Family Guy was supposed to be on the first plane that hit the World Trade Center. He missed the flight by just 10 minutes because of a hangover and a travel agent who gave him the wrong departure time. This near-death experience completely changed his perspective on life and directly influenced the darker, more satirical direction that Family Guy would eventually take in its later seasons. Think about this for a second. If MacFarlane had been on that flight, we would never have gotten the revival seasons of Family Guy, American Dad, or The Orville. The entire landscape of animated comedy would be completely different. But here's where it gets even more twisted. MacFarlane has admitted in interviews that this experience made him realize how fragile life really is, which is why the show became increasingly more nihilistic and dark as the years went on. The random violence, the complete disregard for character development, and the increasingly absurd situations all stem from this one life-changing moment. Now let's talk about something that will make you question everything you think you know about the Griffin family. The house at 31 Spooner Street has a secret basement that's been featured in multiple episodes. But here's what most people don't realize. This basement connects to a network of underground tunnels that run throughout all of Quahog. These tunnels have appeared in at least 7 different episodes across various seasons, but they're never explicitly connected or explained. In one episode, we see Peter emerge from a manhole cover near the drunken clam. In another, Stewie discovers a hidden passage behind his bedroom wall. That leads to what appears to be the same tunnel system. The most revealing moment comes in a throwaway gag where Brian is chasing a tennis ball and disappears down a storm drain, only to emerge from the Griffin's basement minutes later. This isn't just random comedy writing. There's actually a consistent underground geography to Quahog that the writers have been building for years. But here's where it gets really interesting. These tunnels connect to similar underground systems in other Seth MacFarlane shows. If you pay close attention to certain episodes of American Dad, you'll notice that the CIA headquarters has access to tunnels that look remarkably similar to the ones in Family Guy. There's even a brief scene in the Cleveland show where Cleveland falls through his floorboards and lands in what appears to be the same tunnel system before the scene cuts away. This suggests that all of McFarlane's animated universes might actually be connected through this underground network. It's like a multiverse theory, but instead of parallel dimensions, it's all happening in the same world with hidden connections that most viewers never notice. Speaking of hidden connections, let's talk about Stewie Griffin and the most controversial aspect of his character development. Everyone knows that Stewie's sexuality has been a topic of debate for years, with McFarlane giving contradictory statements about whether the character is gay, straight, or something else entirely. But here's what most people don't know. There was originally a planned storyline that would have definitively answered this question, and it was going to be revealed in the most shocking way possible. According to leaked production documents from 2008, there was a planned two-part episode called Stewie's Choice that would have featured an adult version of Stewie traveling back in time to have a conversation with his infant self about his future identity. The adult Stewie was going to reveal that he's actually pansexual, and that his early obsession with matricide was actually a misdirected expression of his confusion about his own identity and place in the world. The episode was going to explore how Stewie's advanced intelligence and emotional maturity as an infant made him aware of concepts and feelings that he couldn't properly process or understand. His violent fantasies about Lois were supposed to represent his frustration with being trapped in a body and family situation that couldn't accommodate his true nature. It would have been groundbreaking television, addressing themes of identity, sexuality, and family dynamics in a way that animated comedy had never attempted before. But the episode was scrapped at the last minute because Fox executives were concerned about the potential backlash from conservative viewers and advertisers. Instead, we got the ambiguous approach that the show has maintained ever since, with Stewie's sexuality remaining deliberately unclear. McFarlane has expressed regret about this decision in later interviews, saying that he wishes he had fought harder to tell that story. This brings us to one of the most shocking pieces of Family Guy lore that involves the show's cancellation and revival. Most fans know that Family Guy was canceled after 3 seasons and then brought back due to strong DVD sales and Adult Swim reruns. But what most people don't know is that during the cancellation period, there was a secret season that was produced but never aired. This lost season, sometimes referred to as Season 0, by animators who worked on it, consisted of 13 episodes that were completed between 2003 and 2004. These episodes were darker, more experimental, and pushed boundaries that even the current version of Family Guy wouldn't dare cross. One episode featured Peter accidentally killing a neighbor and the entire family having to cover it up. Another showed Brian dealing with severe depression and contemplating suicide after a failed relationship. The most controversial episode in this lost season was titled The Real Quahog, and it was essentially a behind-the-scenes look at what the Griffin family's life would be like if they were real people instead of cartoon characters. It showed them dealing with real consequences for their actions, real trauma from their experiences, and real psychological damage from the constant chaos in their lives. Peter was portrayed as an alcoholic with severe brain damage from his countless accidents. Lois was shown struggling with depression and prescription drug abuse. Chris was in therapy for the emotional abuse he'd suffered, and Meg was revealed to be self-harming as a way to cope with her family's treatment of her. This episode was deemed too dark and realistic for television, even by Adult Swim standards. The entire lost season was shelved, and when Family Guy was revived in 2005, the show went in a completely different direction, embracing the absurdist comedy that defines the modern era of the show. But here's the really crazy part. Some of the storylines and jokes from these lost episodes have been recycled and incorporated into later seasons, but in much more sanitized and comedic ways. If you know what to look for, you can actually spot elements from the lost seasons scattered throughout episodes from seasons 4 through 10. Let's shift gears and talk about something that will completely change how you view the show's animation and production. Family Guy uses a technique called limited animation, which is common in television cartoons, but they've hidden several advanced animation techniques throughout the series that most viewers never notice. There are at least 12 episodes that feature what animation experts call rotoscoping, where live-action footage is traced over to create more realistic movement. This technique was used primarily in fight scenes and dance sequences, but it was also used in some of the show's most emotional moments to create more nuanced facial expressions and body language. The most impressive example of this is in the episode where Brian and Stewie are trapped in a bank vault. The entire conversation between the two characters was actually performed by live actors first, with Seth MacFarlane and another voice actor acting out the scene in a recording studio. This footage was then rotoscoped to create the animation, which is why that episode feels so much more intimate and realistic than typical Family Guy episodes. This technique has been used sparingly throughout the series, always in moments where the writers wanted to create genuine emotional connection with the audience. It's one of the reasons why certain episodes feel so much more impactful than others, even though most viewers can't pinpoint exactly why. Now let's dive into something that connects Family Guy to real-world events in ways that are both fascinating and slightly disturbing. The show has accidentally predicted or coincidentally referenced several major news events before they actually happened. This isn't just about the Boston Marathon bombing episode that was pulled from circulation. There are dozens of smaller predictions and coincidences that suggest either incredible luck or some kind of insider knowledge. In a 2001 episode, there's a throwaway joke about airport security being ineffective that aired just 2 months before September 11th. A 2003 episode featured a gag about a pandemic shutting down the world that's eerily similar to what happened with COVID-19 17 years later. There's even an episode from 2007 that jokes about social media destroying democracy, which feels remarkably prescient given everything that's happened with Facebook and Twitter in recent years. The most unsettling prediction came in a 2004 episode that featured a throwaway gag about a reality TV star becoming president and destroying American foreign policy. This was 5 years before Donald Trump even appeared on The Apprentice, and 13 years before he actually became president. These coincidences have led to conspiracy theories about the show's writers having inside information or being part of some larger cultural manipulation scheme. While that's obviously nonsense, it does highlight how satirical comedy often accidentally stumbles onto truth by exaggerating current trends to their logical extremes. Here's something that will blow your mind about the show's voice acting. Seth MacFarlane doesn't just voice multiple main characters. He actually performs entire conversations with himself, acting out complex emotional scenes between different characters in real time. This requires an incredible level of vocal and emotional control that most people don't appreciate. But here's the really impressive part. MacFarlane has admitted that he sometimes gets so deep into character during recording sessions that he actually forgets which voice he's supposed to be using. There are outtakes where you can hear him starting a line as Peter and finishing it as Brian, or beginning as Stewie and ending as Quagmire. These mistakes are usually caught in editing, but occasionally they make it into the final episode as intentional jokes or character moments. The most impressive vocal performance in the show's history is probably the episode where Stewie and Brian are trapped in the vault, which we mentioned earlier. MacFarlane performed both sides of that 20-minute conversation live, switching between characters fluidly while maintaining the emotional authenticity of both performances. It's a masterclass in voice acting that most people take for granted because they're focused on the jokes and story. Let's talk about something that connects Family Guy to the broader world of animation in ways that most people never realize. The show has actually influenced the development of animation technology in significant ways. The techniques developed for Family Guy's cutaway gags have been adopted by other animated shows, and some of the software innovations created specifically for Family Guy are now industry standard. The show was one of the first animated series to use digital ink and paint techniques exclusively, abandoning traditional cell animation years before other shows made the switch. This allowed for more complex visual effects and faster production times, but it also created a distinctive visual style that influenced countless other animated series. More importantly, Family Guy pioneered several techniques for creating rapid scene transitions and visual gags that are now used throughout animated television. The quick cuts, The seamless transitions between reality and fantasy sequences, and the integration of different animation styles within single episodes, all originated with Family Guy and have since become standard tools in animated comedy. Here's something that will surprise you about the show's writing process. Unlike most television shows, Family Guy doesn't use a traditional writer's room structure. Instead, the writers work in small teams of 2 or 3 people, developing individual segments and gags that are then assembled into full episodes by a separate editorial team. This explains why Family Guy episodes often feel like collections of loosely connected skits rather than coherent narratives. It's not a bug in the writing process, it's a feature. The show is designed to work like a comedy variety show, with each segment standing on its own while contributing to a larger comedic experience. The cutaway gags are written by a completely different team of writers who specialize in creating short-form comedy content. These writers often don't even know what episodes their gags will be used in. They just create libraries of content that the editorial team draws from when assembling episodes. This system allows for incredible creative flexibility, but it also means that the show's quality can vary wildly from episode to episode, depending on which combination of writers and editors are working on any given installment. Now let's explore something that connects Family Guy to other forms of media in unexpected ways. The show has actually influenced the development of internet meme culture more than most people realize. Many of the comedic techniques that are now standard in online comedy content originated with Family Guy's approach to humor. The random cutaway gag structure that defines Family Guy is essentially the same format used in modern social media content, where short, disconnected pieces of entertainment are strung together to create longer experiences. The show's influence can be seen in everything from TikTok videos to YouTube compilations to internet memes. More specifically, Family Guy popularized the idea of referential humor that doesn't require deep knowledge of the reference to be funny. The show's pop culture parodies work even if you don't know what's being parodied, which is now a fundamental principle of internet comedy. As we wrap up this deep dive into Family Guy lore, let's talk about the most shocking revelation of all. There's evidence to suggest that the show is actually much more carefully planned and deliberately crafted than its chaotic surface suggests. Despite appearing random and improvisational, Family Guy follows complex narrative patterns and character development arcs that span multiple seasons. The show uses what narrative theorists call spiral storytelling, where characters appear to remain static but actually undergo subtle changes that accumulate over time. Peter may seem like the same character he was in Season 1, but if you watch carefully, you can see how his experiences have gradually shaped his worldview and behavior patterns. This sophisticated storytelling approach is disguised by the show's crude humor and seemingly random structure, but it's there for viewers who know how to look for it. It's one of the reasons why Family Guy has remained culturally relevant for over 2 decades, while many other animated comedies have faded into obscurity. The show's longevity isn't just due to its shock value or pop culture references. It's because underneath all the chaos and controversy, there's actually a carefully constructed narrative universe with consistent internal logic and genuine character development. So there you have it. Family Guy isn't just a random collection of offensive jokes and pop culture references. It's a complex, carefully crafted piece of entertainment that has influenced animation technology, comedy writing, internet culture, and narrative television in ways that most people never realize. These revelations should completely change how you watch the show going forward. Every episode contains layers of meaning, technical innovation, and cultural commentary that extend far beyond the surface-level humor. The Griffin family's adventures in Quahog are actually part of a much larger and more sophisticated entertainment universe than anyone could have imagined. If this video opened your eyes to the hidden depths of Family Guy, make sure you like and subscribe for more deep dives into the secret histories of your favorite shows. And let me know in the comments which piece of Family Guy lore surprised you the most. Until next time, keep looking for the hidden stories behind the stories you think you know. Did you know that Family Guy has been secretly building one of the most complex fictional universes on television for over 2 decades? And tonight we're diving deep into every hidden connection, conspiracy theory, and mind-bending detail that will either put you to sleep or keep you awake all night thinking about how Brian Griffin might actually be the smartest character in animated television history. Welcome to the most comprehensive exploration of Family Guy lore ever assembled, where we'll uncover the hidden patterns that connect seemingly random episodes across 20-plus seasons, reveal the dark psychological underpinnings of Peter Griffin's behavior, and examine why this seemingly simple animated sitcom contains more philosophical depth than most people realize. Let's start with something that seems innocent on the surface but becomes deeply unsettling when you really think about it. The fact that Stewie Griffin, a 1-year-old baby, possesses technology that surpasses anything available in our current reality. His time machine alone represents engineering capabilities that would revolutionize human civilization. Yet nobody in his family seems to notice or care that their infant has created devices that violate the fundamental laws of physics as we understand them. The implications of Stewie's inventions extend far beyond simple comedy. When you consider that he's built ray guns, mind control devices, teleportation equipment, and vehicles capable of interdimensional travel, all while maintaining the physical and cognitive limitations of a toddler. This suggests either that the Griffin family exists in a universe where the laws of science operate completely differently, or that Stewie himself represents something far more extraordinary than a precocious child. Think about the episodes where Stewie travels through time and encounters multiple versions of himself from different timelines. Each iteration of Stewie possesses the same impossible technological capabilities, which implies that his genius transcends individual timeline variations. This consistency across dimensional boundaries suggests that Stewie's intelligence might be a fundamental constant in the Family Guy multiverse, rather than a random genetic anomaly. But here's where things get really interesting when we examine the relationship between Stewie's technological capabilities and Brian's intellectual development throughout the series. Brian Griffin starts as a relatively normal talking dog who enjoys literature and maintains liberal political views. However, as the seasons progress, his personality becomes increasingly complex, cynical, and philosophically sophisticated, almost as if he's being influenced by prolonged exposure to Stewie's advanced technology and interdimensional adventures. The evolution of Brian's character raises questions about the nature of consciousness and intelligence in the Family Guy universe. If a dog can develop human-level cognitive abilities and engage in complex, philosophical discussions, then what does this say about the fundamental nature of reality in Quahog? The fact that Brian's intelligence continues expanding throughout the series while other characters remain relatively static suggests that something unique is happening to him. Specifically, consider the episodes where Brian dies and is replaced by Vinny, the replacement dog, who, despite being the same species, lacks Brian's intellectual capabilities. This proves that Brian's intelligence isn't simply a species-wide trait, but something specifically tied to his individual consciousness. The temporary replacement storyline also demonstrates how integral Brian has become to the family dynamic, not just as a pet, but as a legitimate family member whose absence creates genuine emotional trauma. The relationship between Brian and Stewie represents one of the most complex friendships in animated television, spanning adventures through time, space, and alternate dimensions. Their bond transcends typical pet-owner relationships and approaches something resembling true intellectual partnership. This dynamic becomes even more fascinating when you consider that their adventures often involve visiting timelines where their relationship takes different forms, sometimes as friends, sometimes as enemies, and occasionally as something approaching equals moving deeper into Family Guy lore. We encounter the recurring theme of Peter Griffin's seemingly limitless capacity for causing destruction, while somehow avoiding serious consequences. Peter has crashed vehicles through buildings, started international incidents, caused environmental disasters, and engaged in behavior that would realistically result in imprisonment or death. Yet he continues living his suburban lifestyle with minimal repercussions for his actions. This pattern suggests that Peter might exist within some kind of protective narrative bubble, where conventional rules of cause and effect don't apply in the same way they would for normal people. The consistency of his survival across increasingly dangerous situations implies either supernatural intervention or existence within a simulated reality where certain characters are programmed to be essentially indestructible. The Griffin family's relationship with death itself provides another layer of complexity to the series' lore. Multiple characters have died and been resurrected, Brian's temporary death being the most notable example, but there are numerous instances where characters should have died, but somehow survived catastrophic events. This casual relationship with mortality suggests that the Family Guy universe operates under different existential rules than our reality. Quahog itself emerges as a character in the series when you examine how the town responds to the Griffin family's constant chaos. Despite Peter's regular destruction of property and public safety, the community continues functioning normally as if nothing happened. This resilience suggests either that Quahog exists outside normal space-time or that the town itself possesses some kind of regenerative properties that allow it to recover from damage. The recurring characters in Family Guy form an intricate web of relationships that span decades of episodes, each bringing their own psychological complexities to the narrative. Cleveland Brown's departure and return to the series creates interesting questions about character continuity and the nature of friendship in long-running animated series. His experiences in his own spin-off show technically exist within the same universe, but rarely get referenced in Family Guy proper, creating a kind of parallel narrative space. Glenn Quagmire represents perhaps the most problematic character in terms of Family Guy lore, because his behavior often crosses lines that would be completely unacceptable in real life. Yet he's treated as a quirky neighbor rather than a legitimate threat. This treatment reveals something disturbing about the moral framework of the Family Guy universe, where certain types of harmful behavior are normalized through repetition and comedic presentation. The Chicken Man fights between Peter and Ernie. The giant chicken deserves special attention because they represent some of the most elaborately choreographed sequences in the entire series. These battles often span multiple locations, involve massive collateral damage, and demonstrate fighting capabilities that far exceed what either character should possess based on their apparent physical attributes. The chicken fights serve as almost mythological episodes within the series where normal rules are completely suspended. When examining these extended fight sequences, you notice they follow patterns similar to classic mythology, where heroes and monsters engage in battles that reshape the landscape around them. The destruction caused during these fights would realistically devastate Quahog's infrastructure and economy. Yet everything returns to normal by the next episode, as if these epic confrontations exist in a separate reality layer. The cutaway gags that Family Guy is famous for create their own complex narrative space where characters interact with historical figures, fictional characters, and alternate versions of themselves. These brief sequences often contain more concentrated storytelling than entire episodes of other shows, and they've created a vast library of micro-narratives that exist alongside the main Family Guy timeline. Some cutaway gags reference each other across seasons, creating a meta-narrative about the nature of memory and storytelling within the Family Guy universe. The fact that characters sometimes remember events from cutaway gags in later episodes suggests that these sequences aren't just comedic diversions but actual experiences that exist within the characters' shared reality. The show's treatment of religion and spirituality adds another layer to its lore, with multiple episodes exploring different afterlife concepts. Divine intervention scenarios and questions about the nature of good and evil. Death appears as a recurring character who seems genuinely concerned about maintaining cosmic balance, which implies that the Family Guy universe operates under specific metaphysical rules. Episodes featuring death reveal that the afterlife in Family Guy functions more like a bureaucracy than a spiritual realm with specific procedures for soul collection and processing. This bureaucratic approach to mortality suggests that existence in the Family Guy universe might be more regulated and systematic than it initially appears, despite the surface-level chaos. The time travel episodes create fascinating paradoxes and timeline complications that the show sometimes acknowledges and sometimes completely ignores. This inconsistent approach to temporal mechanics suggests that time itself might function differently in the Family Guy universe, perhaps operating more like a narrative device than a fixed physical law. Stewie's time travel adventures often involve meeting historical figures who react to him as if talking babies are perfectly normal. This consistency across different time periods implies that the unusual characteristics of Family Guy characters might be universal constants that exist across all timelines rather than modern anomalies. The show's relationship with celebrity culture creates interesting questions about the nature of reality within its universe. Real celebrities often appear as themselves, but they interact with the fictional Griffin family as if they're legitimate public figures. This blending of real and fictional personalities suggests that the Family Guy universe might exist parallel to our own reality rather than completely separate from it. When celebrities appear in Family Guy, they often display exaggerated versions of their public personas, which raises questions about whether these are the actual celebrities or fictional representations based on public perception. The show's treatment of celebrity interactions reveals something interesting about how fictional universes can comment on and interact with real-world culture. The evolution of animation quality throughout Family Guy's run creates its own meta-narrative about the nature of visual reality within the show. Early episodes feature simpler animation styles, while later seasons display increasingly sophisticated visual effects. This progression mirrors technological advancement in our reality, but within the show it might represent something deeper about the nature of visual perception in the Family Guy universe. Episodes that specifically reference the show's animation style or production history create fascinating recursive loops where characters become aware of their fictional nature without fully breaking the fourth wall. These moments suggest that the characters might exist on multiple levels of reality simultaneously, both as fictional constructs and as conscious beings within their own universe. The Griffin family's economic situation provides another layer of complexity because Peter's job history and income level should realistically make their lifestyle impossible. Yet they maintain a suburban home, support multiple vehicles, and finance Stewie's expensive scientific experiments. This economic impossibility suggests that traditional rules of finance and resource management don't apply in the Family Guy universe. Episodes that focus on the family's financial struggles reveal that they do face economic consequences, but these problems get resolved through increasingly absurd means that wouldn't work in real life. This pattern implies that the Griffin family exists within a narrative framework where problems require narrative solutions rather than realistic ones. The show's treatment of education and intelligence creates interesting patterns when you examine how different characters learn and grow. Brian's intellectual development contrasts sharply with Peter's consistent ignorance, despite both characters having access to similar information and experiences. This disparity suggests that intelligence in the Family Guy universe might be more fixed and character-specific than it is in reality. Stewie's advanced knowledge, despite his infant status, raises questions about how learning and development work in this fictional universe. His vocabulary and technical expertise far exceed what any child could realistically possess. Yet other baby characters in the show display normal infant behavior. This inconsistency implies that Stewie's intelligence might be supernatural rather than developmental. The recurring theme of alternate dimensions and parallel universes in Family Guy creates a complex multiverse structure where different versions of familiar characters exist with varying personality traits and life circumstances. These alternate reality episodes suggest that the main Family Guy timeline is just one possible configuration among infinite variations. When characters travel between dimensions, they often encounter versions of themselves that made different life choices or develop different personality traits. This concept implies that character identity in the Family Guy universe might be more fluid and circumstantial than it initially appears. The multiverse episodes also raise questions about free will and determinism within the show's cosmology. The show's approach to historical events creates fascinating anachronisms and alternative history scenarios that suggest the Family Guy universe might exist in a timeline that diverges from our own reality in subtle but important ways. Episodes set in historical periods often include modern elements that shouldn't exist, which implies either time travel influence or an alternate historical development. Family Guy's treatment of technology. Advancement shows interesting patterns where some innovations appear decades ahead of schedule, while others lag behind realistic development timelines. This inconsistent technological progression suggests that innovation in the Family Guy universe might be driven by different factors than in our reality. The psychological depth of individual characters becomes more apparent when you examine their behavior patterns across multiple seasons. Peter's childlike wonder and destructive impulses suggest possible developmental disorders or psychological trauma that the show explores through comedy rather than serious analysis. This approach reveals character complexity while maintaining entertainment value. Brian's intellectual pretensions and emotional vulnerabilities create a character study about the relationship between intelligence and happiness. His struggles with depression, alcoholism, and unfulfilled artistic ambitions represent serious psychological themes disguised as animated comedy. This layered characterization demonstrates how Family Guy uses humor to explore deeper human experiences. Lois Griffin's role as the family anchor reveals interesting dynamics about gender roles and family stability in dysfunctional households. Her ability to maintain sanity while managing Peter's chaos, Stewie's schemes, and the general dysfunction suggests either extraordinary psychological resilience or possible supernatural intervention. The supporting characters in Family Guy each contribute to a larger tapestry of human behavior and social commentary. Joe Swanson's disability and heroic personality create discussions about capability and determination, while Mayor West's bizarre behavior comments on political leadership and civic responsibility. As we reach the end of this exploration into Family Guy lore, it becomes clear that what appears to be a simple animated sitcom actually contains layers of philosophical complexity, psychological depth, and narrative sophistication that reward careful analysis. The show's ability to maintain comedic entertainment while exploring serious themes demonstrates the power of animation as a storytelling medium. Whether you're drifting off to sleep or staying awake, thinking about these connections, Family Guy continues evolving and adding new layers to its already complex mythology. Each episode contributes to a larger narrative about family dysfunction, American culture, and the absurd nature of modern existence, wrapped in accessible animated comedy that somehow makes profound observations about the human condition feel effortlessly entertaining and surprisingly profound.